Good morning to you. I am Dan Kopp of Leading Like a Buffalo, and with me today, as always, is Ty Firsching. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ty Firsching. I am with Trade Leadership, and I am currently in Entebbe, Uganda. So that being said, if my technical difficulties arise, and I say mine because it's usually on my end, because of whatever power or just Wi-Fi strength, Dan will take over, and hopefully I'll come back on and join in as he's proceeding along. So
Right on. Well, good to see you again, Ty. And as always, it's a pleasure to meet with you. So, before I get into today's topic of how great leaders survive a crisis, I want to encourage those of you who are watching or listening to feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to ty@tradesecrets.com, or you can reach out to me at dan@leadingbuffalo.com. We do keynote speaking, organizational training, coaching, and mentoring, and we help other leaders lead in a manner that is authentic for them and allows them to be confident. So, today's topic: how great leaders survive a crisis. Dun, 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 dun. None of us who are talking today or are listening like dealing with a crisis. They aren't fun, but they can be they can make you or break you as a leader. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to survive a crisis. We're not literally meaning life or death here, but we're talking about being able to have the positional authority and respect and trust and on the back end of a crisis that you do going into a crisis. So first of all, one of the thoughts I have is, when you're talking about dealing with a crisis, it's not something that you're doing your operational things and leading and doing all these things, and all of a sudden you've never prepared for the crisis, and now the crisis is in front of you. So we need to back up to when we start talking about those operational things and how we lead and what we do as a leader that will set you up for success in a crisis. Again, nobody likes a crisis, but there are ways you can prepare yourself and your organization to have better outcomes in the crisis. And it's not going to happen overnight. If you're new in your leadership position and you've got a crisis the next couple of days, good luck. We're here to help you through it if you need us, or on the back end, if you want some coaching, mentoring, whatever, we're here to help. But if you are not in the position to be facing a crisis soon, which I hope you're not, let's talk about what you can do. So in the past, we've talked about what Ty refers to as the Buffalo tenets. Those are the tenets that my company espouses in Leading Like a Buffalo. We talk about how to lead, and we help others lead in a manner that's right for them. Two of the main things I talk about are first of all, being beyond reproach in everything you do, and taking care of your people. So if you do nothing else in regard to leadership, or no other nuggets of knowledge come out of listening to Ty and me speak, or if you don't have the time for an all-encompassing approach to examining your own leadership, think of those two things: be beyond reproach and take care of your people. Let's talk about how those could play out in a crisis situation. So let's assume you've got a long runway and you're 2 to 3 years into your position where you've had the opportunity to build trust and take care of your people. And you're at a point where you've got a solid leadership base and people trust you and respect you, not just because of your position, but also because of who you are and how you're leading. So all of a sudden you're 2 years in and you've got a crisis on your hand. You could react poorly and come up with a bad solution that does not necessarily work. But if you've been beyond reproach for the previous 2 years and you've taken care of your people, the response you're going to get from your people is, well, that didn't go the greatest, or it could have been better, or we could have done it this way, but we know that there was no ulterior motive, trying to do the right thing, and he ultimately was taking care of us when he made that decision, although in hindsight it may not have been the best. So taking care of your people, being beyond reproach, can allow you some leniency if a crisis is not handled ideally. Again, a crisis is not something you can ever say, when X happens, we're going to do Y, because every crisis, even if it's the same crisis that repeats itself, it's going to be different circumstances. You're not going to react the same way. So if you prepare yourself beforehand to legitimately gain respect and the power and authority that comes with your position is genuine and people look to you for leadership and respect what you're doing, when you live those things for a year or two or three or four, whatever, and you do the same things in a crisis, people are going to rally around you versus, hey, that was a bad decision. He or she's got to go. Because we all have made bad decisions, but we try to do what's right in the heat of the moment during the crisis. So Ty sort of started us out with the basics in leadership to help you in the future in the crisis. Your thoughts before I get back on my soapbox.
Well, I like the idea you brought up where we're not talking about crisis like life or death, although sometimes having that foundation a couple years prior in life or death crisis is imperative. So, and a perfect example of where we're distinguishing this is, imagine you're an EMT and you go and somebody's having a heart attack and you have to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. You know how to act in that because you're trained for that particular crisis. So it becomes automatic, whether you haven't done it in real time in 2, 3, 5 years. Once you start, it's automatic because you train so hard for that. Unfortunately, the business world, when we're talking about crisis, it could be a myriad of things. And so having that strong foundation, which you were talking about, taking care of your people and being beyond reproach, if that's already evident, it makes it easy for people to go, yeah, he knows what he's doing. Let's follow. This is how you survive as a leader, is because the people have your back. Okay. So, and I appreciate that a lot, because it all boils down to, if you're going to have the values in place, if you're going to have your personal state intact, and if you're going to be able to evoke some type of active discernment. And when situations come up that are abrupt, a lot of times you don't have all the valuable information, but yet a decision needs to be made. So it is in all essence a crisis, because you're making a decision with the available information, even though you know that there's other information out there, you just can't get it. You have to make the decision before it comes. So when that happens, the ability to have that active discernment component where you're encompassing everything, all the information, all the values of your company or yourself, and your personal state, one of those may get sacrificed a little bit because you don't have everything you need to make that decision. And what you can rely on is, if you have a foundational approach that already set, what you can rely on is that you still made the best decision with all the possible information, and therefore you move on. Now, if you realize it was the wrong decision, it doesn't matter, because the decision's made. You can't go back and change it. But what you can do is rely on as Dan was saying, the foundational approach that you have to recover, to survive, right? To survive the crisis, because now you're in recovery mode. Whatever that looks like depends on the situation, but at least you have the tools. Don't get bogged down in, I can't make a decision, I don't know all the information, because if you don't make the decision, things may get dramatically worse. And so you have to understand, is a decision necessary at the time? And if it is, you make the best decision possible. Dan?
Two thoughts come to mind, both decision related. First of all, and you and I spoke a little bit before we got on camera today, in regard to, at times, none of the options that you have in front of you as a leader seem palatable. Like, you could poke holes in every decision and not be comfortable with any of them. So at times, you literally in a position that you just have to make the decision that is the best of the worst, is what it amounts to. None of these are ideal, but which one seems to be a little bit better than the others? So that's the first step, because I think of things like COVID and all the decisions that were made with COVID. I'm pretty sure that most people that were mandating masks weren't doing it because they love to wear masks. They were doing it with the thought, I need to protect people. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Did it work? I'm not going to get into that argument. I'm just merely stating that it was not an ideal situation and people made decisions based on what they thought was the best of all the bad options in front of them. Whether it worked or not, I'm not sure. Takes me to the back end. You've made a decision. It's over. The crisis is over. And Ty said something like, maybe it wasn't the best decision. Well, another tenet that I espouse, own it. If you also see that it could have been done better, because we've all Monday morning quarterback, right? Second guessing. If you see that you could have done it, you decided to go this way and it should have gone that way, own it. Say, hey, this is what I did. This is why I did it. This is why I made the decision I did at the time. I now see that I could have done it this way. Next time we'll be better prepared. So couple that idea of owning it with be beyond reproach, take care of your people. You implement, make a decision. It could have been better. You realize that, own it on the back end. That's just going to further bolster your respect and the trust that you have in you when you say, I did what I thought was right. I didn't have, no ulterior motives. I made the best decision, was ethical, moral, and I had your best interests in mind. Oh, it didn't work out. Sorry about that. My bad. I now see that I should have done that. So you own it. And that will further help you, quote, survive the situation. Because when a crisis does not get managed and handled well, oftentimes there's got to be a scapegoat. Like, who's in charge? That's the person that gets let go, fired, etc. So if you go into it prepared, be an ethical and moral, take care of your people, come out of it saying, yeah, that could have been better. I'll own that one. Next time we'll incorporate these new ideas and this understanding. If we have a crisis comparable to this in the future, that's going to help bring your leadership back to where it was and also help you survive the situation itself.
Yeah, and you brought up, I love it when you bring things and I get to think of something new because it makes me feel smart. And it's you brought up something with COVID. Okay, COVID was not only a business crisis, it was a personal crisis as well. So not all crises in your business world are also personal. Like, do they touch at home? So you have kind of two different worlds there. Hopefully you're the same authentic person you are in the business as you are at home. But let's say for COVID, that was a whole giant, I don't know what you call it, a ball of wax, I guess, because people were affected by it personally and people were affected at it professionally. And when decisions were made, you had to realize that everybody was going through the same boat. But what happens when you're having a personal crisis as a leader and you're trying to run a business? Then it affects your leadership. And people that say it doesn't affect my business world if I have a crisis at home, you're fooling yourselves. It is. Yeah, and I'll call it like that. And Dan agree. I see Dan. Yeah, because you are. And so what you need is that approach is like, still go with the tenets, taking care of yourself, go with the tenets, be beyond reproach. Don't compromise your values. Do what needs to be done for everybody. Keep your personal state and make the decision based on available information in that area of your life. It doesn't mean ignore what's going on personally, but you have to realize what's going on personally affects you as a leader. If you're having a bad day at home and you leave angry and you get to work, chances are you're going to be a little short with some people at some point. If you get bombarded when you first walked in, you have to take that reset. You have to go that route and encompass everything that you've known yourself to be true to as a leader.
If you think that your personal life doesn't affect your work life, ask your trusted advisors. They might enlighten you because they'll see a difference. You might not say a word, but that right there could be a cue. Like, oh, you're usually outgoing and jovial, and today you're sort of withdrawn. What's up? Ask your trusted advisors, and they'll have a different point of view. I guarantee it.
You say that because A lot of times, and I'm just going to interject this, a lot of times you may think so because the people on the peripheral won't see it. They won't see that you're different, you're acting different. But the people that your trusted advisors that know you, I remember one day I was hot. I forget what it was, but it had something to do with my personal life, and I was hot. And one of she walks in, and she says good morning, and I said good morning, and she goes, "Wow, you're hella pissed," like that. And I was just like, "No, I'm not," and she goes, "Yeah, you are. What's up?" Like that. And if she didn't have that conversation with me, my day would have been just flat, because if she knew who I thought was someone on the outside, right? She was close enough where she knew. I was like, man, if she knows, everybody knows, like that.
Right.
And so she became, I guess I said she was my trusted advisor. She became one of my trusted advisors.
Right on.
She's like, okay, yeah, let me tell you what's going on. And she shielded me the rest of the day from questions that I didn't need to be dealing with. And, like that. It was like, oh, thank you very much. That was very comforting. But
Nice. I'm going to give a practical example of how another tenet that I help people embrace is called leading like a buffalo. Or excuse me, leading like King Arthur. Lead like King Arthur. Leading like a buffalo is the name of the company. Lead like King Arthur. So where am I going with that? King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, had his trusted advisors, and he trusted his advisors to give him guidance. Do that. That is a way to set yourself up for success in a crisis. And let me give you an example. I was speaking at a national church safety conference about a year ago, and I said, here's an example. You've got safety teams with people from various backgrounds on these teams to help keep your congregation and your facilities safe. Let's assume you come from the lens as the leader of this team and the decision maker ultimately in a crisis. You come from the lens that your forte is physical safety. So are the doors locked? What lines of sight? Whatever. All the things that go into the physical aspects of your campus, your building, whatever the case may be. But you've got teammates who are about personal safety, like literally the human being in front of me. How do I keep that person safe? Not ignoring the locked door or the open window. And then you could perhaps have somebody who's got active shooter type response or active shooter experience. All of you are in the same world, but you look at a problem from 3 different perspectives. So let's assume your crisis is a year or two eventually. It's not today. So if you start embracing leading like King Arthur and you move forward and embrace the voice of those you lead, you're going to learn from that personal safety person. You're going to learn from that active shooter expert while you're also helping them learn the physical security side of what you do. So when it comes time to make a snap decision a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, you've learned from them what it takes to focus on personal safety, what it takes to respond to an active shooter, even though you're the decision maker and you don't have time for a democratic approach to let's react to what's going on. You've trained yourself to react. Sort of like athletes do. You train. So it's muscle memory. So you've got snap decisions to make. And if you're beyond reproach, you take care of your people, you've led like King Arthur, and you've grown along with those members of your team who are also growing, you're better apt to make a good decision versus I'm looking at it through my lens and my lens only. So lead like King Arthur is going to make you a better leader. It's also going to make you a better overall responder in a crisis situation because you're going to see things in a manner that you otherwise wouldn't had you just listened to your own voice.
Yeah, and leading like King Arthur, and I think some people, I'm going to clarify it a little bit, is essentially the best teamwork you could possibly have. But it doesn't absolve you from being the leader. You're still the leader. Okay, but you have these experts working on what needs to be done to resolve the issue. But you're still the leader, so don't lose sight that, when we say lead like King Arthur, that everybody has their own opinion and we're going to go, you're still the ultimate authority on what's going to happen. But the idea that you're open to the suggestions and you're calling in the experts, the people you know that or from their lens, you know what they're talking about in your situation with the church safety, then you have comprehensive overview of the problem. You have experts for every lens and view of the problem, and you resolve the issue and come to a solution. So that in itself is like the most powerful type of leadership you can possibly have, because your probability for success when you do that is up here. Sometimes when you just listen to yourself and you don't have all the available information, it's down here. So I like that. It just came to my mind.
I agree. When you lead like King Arthur, you've got to let your people know what's going on. All right, we've got a collective decision to make. Maybe it's policy. Let's agree on how this policy is written so we can get it approved, and this is standard operating procedure. Great. We've all got different perspectives, and the end result is probably a bit of an average of everybody's point of view. At other times, you might have to make a unilateral decision on something, crisis or otherwise, where you still should get people's points of view. And hey, I've got a decision to make, but I want to make the best decision. Here's what I'm thinking. What do the 3 or 8 of you think about this? And theoretically, you're going to alter your decision or the strategy you implement based on their point of view. So leading like King Arthur allows you to vet decisions that you are yours to make, or make better collective decisions. And maybe your trusted advisor say, yes, the problem you presented and the solution you have is perfect. Well, great. I'd rather have them sign off on it or tweak it a little bit before I implement it versus implement it and they come back and say, oh, boss, you should have done that a little bit differently. Ooh, now you tell me. Well, shame on me for not asking their point of view beforehand. Yeah. So own the responsibility of the decision. If it's yours, still get their point of view. If it's a collective decision, that point of view and your decision's going to get better because their points of view will better inform your collective decision.
And the decision is still yours after the collective decision is made. You're still, let's go with this.
Yep.
But one thing that does is back to the active personal engagement, that really means that you're following through on your values, and your personal state is going to be much better knowing that you actually took what needed to be done in reference to getting all the information and getting different points of view. And so that in itself is being actively discerning in the decision-making process, even though you personally didn't come up with the solution. And don't get that ego where you have to make that decision.
Right. It can help with your personal state, because you can go to sleep and say, all right, I had all the readily accessible, relevant information, and I made what I thought was the best decision. You can't be faulted for that. You can't be faulted. And if it turns out to be not the greatest, own it on the back end. We already talked about that.
And if it turns out to be the best decision, then give credit where credit is due. Give it to your people. Take care of your people. Make them like, yeah, baby, we did it.
Right on. All right. Well, I hope, first of all, that all the leaders who are watching or listening to this don't have to deal with a crisis. But hey, who am I kidding? All of us have to deal with a crisis eventually in our careers, some more than others. So please be beyond reproach. Please keep your people in mind. Please lead like King Arthur. And if it goes south, please own it. And that will help you survive a crisis. So if you'd like to work with Ty or me, feel free to contact us directly, Dan@leadingbuffalo.com, Ty at tradeleadership.com, or you can reach out directly to us, DM us on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to help you. Even if you simply have a question, we are here to help. Reach out, ask a question. You might need a point of view. Maybe you're a team of one, you're a solopreneur, and you can't lead like King Arthur. Contact us, and we can give our 2 cents for what it's worth. So we'd love to hear from you. If you're watching the replay, feel free to ask questions. If you're watching live, feel free to ask questions. We'll do our best to answer questions live on air. And if we don't get to them, we'll answer them in the next episode. So as always, it's Dan Kopp of Leading Like a Buffalo, Ty Firsching of Trade Secrets, and we are talking leadership, and everybody can do it. Good luck.
Take care, everyone.